to talk about? What's today?
Let's talk about me.
What's
Let's
today?
talk about us. Let's talk about kind of like a side story in the midst of the fires in LA.
Yeah, man.
We're online
Have you been affected
and
by that?
not directly, luckily, no. Have you?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, shit. What was your affliction?
Well, we talked about this in the last episode, but I had to be out of my job for just 3 days, which is no big deal. In reality, you think it should be no big deal, but it actually is a huge deal because 3 days of no pay is
No pay.
literally the difference of like being able to pay certain bills and not.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's a whole different story.
So, have you like been online to see the discussion around the fires? The way people even so what's funny is that so we have the lived experience. We live in LA, right?
Yeah.
And we live like not too far from one of the biggest ones in LA. But
Right.
you have a lot of people who have very strong opinions on the fire and the way they're being handled,
Yeah.
and they don't even live in LA.
Oh, yeah. The guy I'm arguing with right now.
You're arguing with someone?
Yes.
What? Online or what?
On Instagram.
Oh, Instasham? What?
On Instasham.
What is he? Is it like an incel?
I don't want to like label people.
I'll label him.
You feel free to label, but
You can say allegedly.
because we've already used the allegedly card. Bottom, like for real, like just to be real with you, like
Yeah.
I don't want to call people names like that unless they're blatantly.
Yeah.
Like let's say I was arguing with an incel who was just like women exist to like serve men, right? Okay, that's a different story. I'm gonna call out that loser.
Yeah.
But this was like the longest discussion I've had yet within the 4 days at the time recording this about the LA fires. And I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Like when people are going to present an opposing view or try to like point the flaw in whatever I've written, I always want to just first see like why, like where are you coming from? Where are you coming from? Like instead of just like sling shit right back at you, which I know is what you want.
Yeah.
I'll engage you. Like I'm willing to engage any opposing viewpoint to the extent of the knowledge I have at hand.
Right.
So I want to give this guy the benefit of the doubt, not come right out and call him an insult or anything like that. I don't know anything about his life. But we had a super long discussion because I made this post
No shit.
on Instagram this morning. And it's just like a simple understanding the Los Angeles wildfires informative post. One of 1,000 posts that everybody is seeing right now. But you know, like I just felt kind of what's the word? Not inspired. I don't like the word inspired. Compelled. I felt really compelled. Like there a lot of times when I'm making posts online, it's because I feel super compelled to. So sometimes I won't post for like days, and then in one day I could post like 4 or 5 times because I just have so many things to say about some things. Today and yesterday was one of those days. I was just like posting because sometimes I'll just be sitting there, like, detaching, disassociating,
Yeah.
and I'll just be thinking about stuff. I'm just like, I gotta talk about this. Anyways, I had a simple conversation last night with just someone in my DMs. He responded to another post that I shared about the fires, and they were like, this wasn't climate change, it was arson and poor management.
What?
They literally caught several people starting fires. They didn't manage the water properly. I'm just saying this has nothing to do with climate change. So, like, I see that all the time, okay? Surprisingly, this time around, I only got, like, a handful of those comments. So it wasn't that. I think what I said wasn't that polarizing. But you always have these people who just, like, refuse to believe that the truth is anything other than what's logical. One, because I think what's logical is sometimes terrifying. And two, because they're so inundated with binary thinking that they can't.
Binary thinking. We have to talk about that at some point.
I am always talking about binary thinking online. Anyways, so like that's something I'm always talking about online. It's just like binary. Like everybody's stuck in a binary thinking.
Yeah, this or that.
That stems from the polarizing culture that our politicians have cultivated over the last, I don't know, 3, 4 decades.
Yeah.
But my point was, I needed to talk about that. Especially, I felt kind of compelled to being here in LA and the proximity of that being so close. I was like, I do feel like I have some weight to this. You know what I mean? If not because I do pay attention to LA politics and local government politics as much as I can,
Yeah.
or at least as much as I do for national news or international news. But I wrote a simple post
Yeah.
breaking down each of those comments. Okay. I started with, well, I wanted to look for narratives. I've been thinking the last couple of days. There's narratives going on right now about these fires. It always happens. It happened with Maui. It happened in 2018. But there's always narratives. Like right when something breaks out in the heat of everything, you have like a million different voices, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, what are the main narratives that are kind of going on right now regarding these fires? Because bottom line is something historical has happened and is happening.
Mm.
The response to it was in itself historically shameful, and the size and destruction of this event, again, nothing short of historical. So you always have people coming out trying to make sense of what's going on in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 narratives right now that I think are going on. Number 1 is the arson narrative.
Yeah.
Either the government is hiring a group of people, or you just have like homeless people lighting shit on fire,
Yeah.
or just I think that's kind of the weakest narrative going on right now. I mean, right now, factually, what we do know is like somebody was arrested
Yeah.
for allegedly starting the Hearst fire. Right, that's one of many fires that are going on right now.
Yeah.
But the narrative says no, they started coincidentally. In fact, that was the narrative that I was like making most sense of on day 2 of these fires going on. I was like, there's no way. Literally, just last night I was working and the winds were strong and I came home and all of a sudden 2 fires happened. Next day, here I am and I'm just checking my phone. It's like every hour, this fire, this fire, this fire, this fire. And to me, I was like, there's no way that that's natural because the winds died down.
Yeah.
How are these fires popping up all over the place?
Yeah.
Right? That can't be natural. In the span of 2 days? You know what I mean? So I was like, that's the narrative. Something's going on here. I was like, terrorist attack. And I'm still holding some space in my mind right now to the possibility of like, there could be some foul play, yes. But there's so many more things going on right now that doesn't leave that narrative as the only correct narrative. So, yeah, I think it's the weakest narrative for sure. But there's so many bigger problems going on here, which leads me to the second narrative, right? Another narrative that people try to bring up. These people are a little bit more sensible, okay? They still don't think it's climate change. They're not as like crazy yet to believe in conspiracy theories. And so they'll talk about what they do know is factual, or as much as they've learned that is factual, and that's usually with the vegetation, the poor forest management, the like, oh, California and the federal government, like they're not cutting back the shrubbery and all that bullshit.
Mm.
And yeah, to some degree, that's true. Fires can start the way they have started and have grown in the size that they have grown because of poor forest management, but that's not the only narrative, right? And then the other narrative I hear is wildfires are natural, right? It's the natural cycle of the earth. We've gone through the ice age, we've gone through extinctions before. What's been happening in the last 10 years is just, California for some reason, just California, by the way. Okay, we're not even talking about Washington or Oregon, those fires
Yeah.
that happen, those devastating fires that happen
Yeah.
every year. And they're like, oh, this is just the natural cycle of the world, right? And that's part of California's ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Again, okay, there's some credit to that argument.
Aw.
That might even be just the weakest argument, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's below the arson narrative. The arson narrative is more credible than the ecosystem. So I pivoted from there in that post and went to like, okay, so what's really fueling the fires?
Mm.
Gave my opinion on what I personally believe is fueling the fires that are going on right now. Then I talk about like waiting for the government won't work, and then call to action, what you can do right now. And then I was like thinking as I was writing this, and I was thinking of like what people would say who are against this. And I was like, man, that's so annoying. I was like getting annoyed at what people could say to what I'm about to post.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm gonna talk about people's like attitudes and opinions. and having a defeatist attitude. Because like inevitably, every time I post anything online, there's always a not a lot of people, like very small group of people who are like very pessimistic and they're just like, yeah, but the world's going to shit, or like, yeah, but
Lazy.
lazy.
What's the word? Because not even really nihilism. It's just like just lazy.
I just call them defeatists. I just call them defeat. Like they're laying down and taking it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Do you want me to read like every slide I wrote and before this I read this guy's before I read my crash out, or
Let's
was that a
see.
good enough explanation?
That's enough context.
That's enough context. Okay, yeah, the post is going to be there for anybody who wants to go back and read that. But in my caption, I'll read my caption at least. I said, the recent wildfires in Los Angeles have sparked fear and confusion, with many narratives circulating about their causes. It's crucial to cut through misinformation and understand the real drivers. Notice I put plural there, behind these devastating events. All caps, do your research, improve your media literacy skills, invest in your mind. So this bro comes in, he comments, he's like, tell me what you, he's like, right? Wax poetic.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think of the reservoir that was drained in February in the area. Or the 2014 prop that was supposed to be built more, this is a typo they had, that was supposed to build more reservoirs throughout California that was never built. Huh? Where are the reservoirs? Let's take a look at other countries calling us idiots for how they manage their forestry to prevent fires from getting worse. Okay. I want to interject myself here really quick because I never addressed that comment. I never addressed that specific line, that line about other countries mocking us because of our poor forest management. Hello, did you forget what happened in Australia?
Yeah.
The entire continent of Australia was on fire.
Yeah.
The rest of the world is not detached from this. These fires are going on everywhere. It's not just California. So I didn't even respond to that claim, but I let that one go. He goes, the earth has been through so many cycles with or without humans. God, I'm sorry. It's hard to read this when it's not written correctly. What really needs to change are those in power who don't care about the people, all caps. This could have been dramatically different if, all caps, real leaders were in charge. So first, I wanted to say that I agree with this dude. Like, I agree with this dude to an extent.
About the leaders in charge?
About the leaders in charge.
Okay.
Not about all the weird conspiracies he's positing,
Yeah.
which hold no weight to the argument. But his solution to all of that, his fix to all of that was keeping those in charge accountable, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I want to do that. I think that Gavin Newsom and, Mayor Bass, whatever her name is,
Yeah.
poorly have handled this. And they could have done more to prevent this. Hands down, easily. They could have done more. I know you can say hindsight is 2020, but it's pretty much expected now. Every year in California, we're gonna have a massive wildfire.
Yeah.
So enough with that hindsight bullshit. We need to keep them accountable. So I'm thinking in my mind, okay, what's your suggestion for fixing all this then, right? That's what I want to address. That's what I want to talk about. Because you can be mad all you want, believe whatever theories you want. I want to see your solution. So your solution is to keep those accountable. Who are you going to put in place of those people in power? More politicians. I respond to the comment and I'm like, okay, cool. This is easy. So I comment, I'm like, hey, you're absolutely right. Holding leaders accountable is critical, but this isn't an either or situation. I'm not disagreeing with him. I'm just adding to it. I'm saying it's not an either or situation. It's both. Holding leaders accountable and addressing the climate crisis. Yes, mismanagement of water resources and failure to follow through on infrastructure projects like 2014 water bond, aka Prop 1, have made California more vulnerable. Draining reservoirs and delaying vital projects are political failures that deserve scrutiny, for sure. But focusing only on leadership failures ignores how much climate change is accelerating these problems, right? Accelerating. Like, back in school, your English teachers, they would read shit with you and they'd be like, okay, I want you to circle that word.
Oh, yeah.
That word, because that word is going to help us interpret the rest of what the author just wrote.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, like, circle the word accelerator, you know what I mean? Like, pay attention to that word accelerate. The earth has definitely gone through natural cycles. But what we are seeing right now, or rather what we have been seeing within the last 20 years, And what we are seeing unfold every single year is not normal. What we are seeing now isn't a part of the normal pattern, right? Human driven climate change is intensifying droughts,
Mm.
heat waves, hotter and hotter than years before, and wildfires burning up at the pace that our planet has not experienced so quickly. So, I basically say that. And then I'm like, I reiterate my point. I'm like, dude, it has to be both, okay? Let's hold leaders accountable for poor water management. Let's hold them accountable for all that shit. But let's also demand action on climate change, right? By pushing for cleaner energy policies, by pushing for corporate accountability, and by utilizing more sustainable resources. You know what I mean? Like, if we just focus on blaming leaders without addressing those environmental causes, we're only allowing corporations and polluters to keep doing what they're doing because there's no repercussions for it, which is even more saddening when you think about Trump coming in and wanting to pull out the Paris Climate Agreement.
That's been in my mind the whole time.
Right? So I'm like, so again, I'm trying to rally with this dude, right? I'm like, yeah, dude, yes, and you know what I mean? So I'm like, let's fucking tear down those corporate hogs and keep these people accountable, right? We can do that. And he's just like, so he completely ignores it. He completely ignores everything I've written and says, tell me what you think of humans who didn't live how we do today, yet they were affected by climate change from the Ice Age to a great flood. Personally, we aren't going to be here forever. The human race has been wiped out many times regardless. False. First of all, if we were wiped out, we would not be here right now. But anyways, he goes, doesn't mean go treating the earth like trash, but there's nothing crazy we can do against the force of nature. But we can't ask folks like Gavin Newsom to resign and stop being careless with the lives of those affected by its negligence. Okay, so you didn't read everything I wrote, but you're still dropping some points. I agree with you. I agree that Gavin Newsom fucked up, and again, keep them accountable. I don't know so much about the whole human race being wiped out several times, but so I basically say that, yeah, yes, dude, I agree with you on all that. But the forces of nature that you see taking place at hand that you just talked about are factually proven to be the result of climate shifts, upward climate shifts, aka the global warming of the planet. And second, the Ice Age didn't just come out of nowhere. Like, he wants to talk about like mass extinction events. The Ice Age didn't just happen. It took thousands and thousands of years to happen, to gradually get colder and colder and colder.
Right.
The climate change that we've seen accelerating in the last 20 years alone, just 20 years, far outpaces the rate at which the Ice Age took place.
Right.
So anyways, I'm like, saying you won't be here forever might be true, but it's like an excuse to be like, well, let our kids figure it out. Well, it's lazy. It's just lazy. It's lazy. It's shifting the blame. He's looking for a scapegoat. Political leaders. I'm so inundated with binary thinking. All I know is Republican good, Democrat bad. Who in power? Newsom, Bass. Liberals suck. Simple solution? Install Republicans. Right? I'm sure he's a maggot and loves Daddy Trump. But
Daddy Trump.
so already I know I'm dealing with binary thinking here, and so he comes back at me with some facts, dude.
Dang.
He's like,
So now he's starting to crash out.
this is where he crashes out. So he says, first of all, I don't really understand the first sentence that he said because I'm like, what? I didn't talk too much about like electrical cars or shit like that. But he seems to be starting off from like the going all electric, which I'm like, brother, if you think that's what climate control is, I don't know what you're thinking. So he says, I'm mixed on electrical options we currently have, along with the fact that even our phones, which we are typing from right now, are likely material from slave work like children. Okay. What? Okay, yeah, I mean, I agree. And he goes, I do wish I didn't have to reply on our current system. Bro's hungering for the Stone Age. Bro's hungering for a piece of papyrus paper so that he could write down his feelings towards me because he feels so morally compromised right now typing from his Android phone. And yes, I assumed he had an Android phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, he goes, I do wish I didn't have to rely on our current systems, but the hard truth, it's not easy. And many aren't going to change, including yourself. Here are some negative effects many aren't willing to sacrifice for clean energy. So he lists a bunch of stuff, right? And he lists 6 points, okay? No, does he do 10? He does 14. No, 11.
Yeah.
So he talks about, global energy all comes from fossil fuels, 80% of it. Renewable energy sources, they're not scaled enough to be good. If we switched right now, it'd be economic disruption. Millions of jobs would be lost in fossil fuel. Boo-hoo. Supply chains would collapse. Shortages in food, medicine, all that shit would collapse, right? All this stuff. So I'm like, okay. He's right. If we were to pull the rug under the systems we have in place right now, everything would collapse. Without a doubt. But dude's missing the point. That's not what I'm talking about. So I'm like, dude, your points highlight real challenges, but again, you're overlooking the bigger issue. These problems, they exist because of our over-reliance on fossil fuels. They exist because of that over-reliance on those unsustainable systems. So I'm like, saying people aren't going to change because they don't want to give up those comforts, you're literally projecting. That's a self-fulfilling excuse. How do we know this? Look at history. All throughout history, societies have adapted when faced with major challenges. Whether it was shifting from whale oil to electricity or moving past leaded gasoline, all that shit can happen now. I mean, we've done that historically in the past. We've gone through the industrialization. We've moved from farms to city life. We've gone through major changes before. I say all that like another 5-6 minutes I spend on responding to this guy. And he responds with, absolutely true. Will you be the first to start this motivation and live completely different starting, let's say tomorrow? Yes? No? Like, now at this point I can tell he's being a smart ass.
Right.
Completely abandoned any civil discourse he was going to take in, and he's just like, okay, I'm just going to be an asshole from this point onward, right?
Side note.
Go ahead.
It's kind of come up before. Most people, I guess usually online, when you come across someone who like doesn't agree with you, most people go straight to like confrontation.
Yeah.
But you like to do like an olive branch kind of thing. You'll recognize like, okay, we have differing opinions, but let's like talk this through, or let's find like a common ground and go from there. Do you think there's a value in that?
Is that not what discourse is? Is that not how ideas are discussed? That's conversation.
Yeah. By definition, yeah. But there's like degrees to that. You know what I mean? So there's like the part where you just like at the bottom you have like differing of opinion. So like someone might have the same politics as you.
Yeah.
Just slightly different like perspective.
Yeah.
And then above that, whatever. Until you get to a certain point where they're like, they fundamentally don't see things the way you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very top of that is when they're on the opposite side.
Well, I want to get to the root of that.
You know what I mean?
I want to understand why you fundamentally
so based
don't.
on what we've seen from this guy so far,
Yeah.
he's like the step below that second to last tier. Or maybe he's in the
Second to last tier.
yeah. Maybe, but I think he's right below that. So he's more than likely to like never agree with someone like this is likely to never agree with you. But on your end, you're willing to talk through it.
Yeah.
So why should other people attempt that?
One, I don't think everybody should attempt that
Okay.
because it's draining. It's tiring. And a lot of people would.
It does look draining.
In fact, that's probably the point that you would come to right now.
Right.
Is that like, why expend all your energy on someone who's not going to change their mind? But for me, it comes more from a curious perspective. Like, I want to get down and kind of understand the heart of these people because, again, I like refuse to submit to any sort of binary thinking. I know this dude is on that tier below, like just completely lost.
Yeah.
But I still want to talk to this guy You know what I mean? Like,
I just want to talk to him.
I feel compelled to. I wouldn't encourage everybody to do it. What I would encourage everybody to do is just freaking research. Is just read. Just fact check. Like, that's what I want you to do first.
So that's also what I was trying to get at too. Is that like this person? So clearly, like they read things here and there. Their facts might not always be like accurate.
Yeah.
They do reading, but again, like they seem to pick and choose the stuff they like.
Right.
So when someone like you, who knows more than they do, and you're willing to offer more information that they currently don't have,
Yeah.
they're not going to look into it.
Of course I'm not going to look into it.
That they're doing that thing where they're choosing, I don't want
Of
it.
course. But that's why I always start my conversations with a sort of jab, because
So you're letting them know.
they can't turn down from that. They'll be so upset that I jabbed them that they're going to want to engage in discourse with me. So I know that in conversation, you can, in a sense, lead people a certain way.
Yeah.
So I want to find out why this guy is thinking the way he's thinking, right?
Right.
If I start off with, hey, bro, let's talk about this, he's just going to be like, you, man. You're fucking liberal or whatever, and just bounce. But at first, I'll play his game a little bit. I'll play a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll respond with my response, but I'm going to call you out on your stupidity because that's what I think you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's automatically going to anger him. He's going to want to, this guy thinks he knows what he's talking about. Let me pull out the facts or whatever he's watching on TikTok.
His version of facts.
Or whatever Trump is tweeting, right?
Yeah.
His version of facts. So, cool. Now we have a conversation. I can do this because most of the points that people bring up are just, they're based on nothing.
Right.
It's so easy to just dismantle. So I can do that. I can take the time to organize and be like, okay, I can address your points directly. Now you're forced to counter my points. Because we've talked about, I've given you an answer for your so-called facts. And so that's what I'm trying to do, right? Like, we're presenting ideas to each other. We're seeing how we respond to those. One of the reasons why I do that is because one, it's public. Anybody could see this. And I'm not afraid of that. Like, that's why whenever someone DMs me this, if they were to crash out my DMs, I would post this too.
Yeah.
But I would censor their face or whatever, right? I would censor the name. This isn't about dogpiling on you. I'm not telling anybody to dogpile. I've never told anybody to dogpile on anybody.
Right.
But I do want people to see the conversations I'm having.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to pretend like I don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? So I want people to see that. And I want people to know that rather than listening to their biases, their TikTok influencers, their Instagram influencers, they too can go a step forward and fact check both those sides.
Okay. So this goes back to the discourse.
Yeah.
You want a full discourse happening. So you directly with that person that you're not agreeing with, but also anyone who follows your page.
Anybody.
Because you have it's like a community you have set up.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get the conversation going publicly.
Yeah.
Rather than just DMing him and going back and forth.
Right. I just want, as hopeless as it may seem, people read. People do read.
Yeah.
I find myself on Instagram every now and then reading threads of an argument. And sometimes I'll abandon it if I'm just two people who don't know what they're talking about. But if it's people who legitimately know what they're talking about, it's always interesting to see those conversations unfold. And then almost in a sense study them. When it will devolve or when that person's clearly lost. How do they react? How do they respond? Because at that point I'm spectating. I'm not partaking in it. And so I'm trying to learn from other people who argue online as well.
Yeah. I forgot where exactly we are in the back and forth, but I did see a comment that was funny.
Yeah, read it.
Someone else chimes in, and they're responding to the guy, and the guy says, your argument boils down to, so you choose to live in a society. It's so intellectually lazy, in bad faith, and unrealistic. And then the guy responds to him and says, y'all internet wars are just the funniest to me. Half of y'all would cry tomorrow if they took away your way of living and beg for fossil fuel. So I found that funny because like, isn't what you're doing right now like your way of living? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so you're going on and on to like become less dependent on like, what do you say? He rambles a lot, but like
Yeah.
a reliance on like electricity. And
Oh
shit.
yeah, about the phone in his hand and it being morally and ethically wrong.
Yeah, but then like clearly like you live on the internet, bro. Like, what are you getting at?
Yeah.
So I just find that funny. Like his retort to both of you is like, you guys would not cry tomorrow if they took away your phones. But like, bro, like, are you not like?
Same with you,
Like,
dude.
Doug, you would not survive if you had to go like live on a farm and start from like zero.
Yeah.
That's what he's posturing.
Yeah, because he was like, "What are you doing? Are you growing your own food? Are you collecting your water? Are you riding on your e-bike?"
Yeah.
So at that point, like he just goes to
It was just a hypocrisy I had to point out.
no, for sure. But at that point, he just goes to like attacking, right? He just goes to he doesn't have anything to say. There's nothing he can say to that.
It started off intellectually lazy, and then became intellectually defeated.
Yeah.
So what did he say to you?
So right before he says the internet warrior comment,
Yeah.
which is his own admission of defeat, he goes, or I address his claims about like sustainable living because that's what he's getting down to. He's trying to point out my hypocrisy. He's trying to say, oh, if they pull the rug out from beneath the systems, you would be begging for those fossil fuels back, right? So he goes, what are you doing to live your life differently? And so I'm like, okay, I'll be honest with you. You're making assumptions about my life and my own efforts without knowing anything about me. You don't know anything about me. You're just assuming all of those things about me.
Right.
I'm doing what I can as a millennial living in one of the most expensive cities in the country, trying to survive financially with the knowledge that I have. Like, yes, I am trying to live sustainably. I am trying to prioritize sustainability, how I spend my money, where I spend my money, who I support. I have been learning how to grow things. Like, yeah, I am legitimately trying to learn how to grow my food. I've started that 3 years ago, and I love it. It's been so rewarding learning how to grow vegetables and all that stuff. So, yeah, I actually am doing that for sure. But here's the real issue at hand, man. You can ask me what I'm doing right now, but why do you care what I'm doing? My point is, individual action alone is not going to solve the climate crisis. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I could live completely off the grid by myself. I could grow all of my own food, never use fossil fuels ever again. But by doing that and abandoning my neighbors, it's not going to undo the damage caused by these massive corporations
Yeah.
and evil, evil leaders.
And we saw that put to the test during COVID.
Yeah.
Everyone was off their car.
Yeah.
People were driving far less than they usually would. You had less cars on the road ever. And the amount of pollution barely dropped.
Yeah.
Barely. And we were off the road for like what, a year, right? Barely dropped, and we saw it put to the test. It wasn't because of like the average person. It's the inverse. It's because of these companies and all their like factories and shit that they won't ever shut down because, well, I'll let you fill in the blanks, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're never going to shut down because they're hungry for money. They're hungry for profits. They have stakeholders to it's just boils down to like what a capitalistic society creates inevitably.
yeah.
So I'm like, dude, no one's like, bro, I'm not saying it's going to be easy.
There's a comment where he does that thing again where he's like, he takes a stab at those quote unquote cringe stop oil protesters. I'm like, bro, like, aren't you the one saying we should get off all this shit?
Yeah.
Like, why are you like, I don't understand this. Like,
What do you think that is?
I mean, he has the tone like a lot of, I don't know what group they'd be in, but he has that tone of like, he needs to go out of his way to like outsmart someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He tries in the beginning. Once he like starts losing, his responses get smaller and smaller. But in the beginning, he tries to like essentially like outword you, and then when he can't, like he resorts to trolling.
Yeah.
We were talking about people who are like, I think, what was the term you used? You said defeatist, right? But defeatist to me sounds like someone who like literally like does nothing. He's going out of his way. I don't know if he follows you or not, but he found your account, chose to comment on it, chose to go back and forth with you.
Yeah, and he has a solution, so-called solution, right?
So-called solution. But his solution isn't coming from like a constructive place.
No.
It came as essentially as a response to someone like you.
Yeah.
And in his mind, I think he thought he was going to win.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was his thought process going into this. I don't think that qualifies as a defeatist. That
No, for
so
sure.
what is that category of like useless person called? I see it as useless.
I would just say like NPC.
Okay, I like that one.
You just say what you're programmed to say.
I like that one. Yeah, that works.
You just say what you're programmed to say because it's so easy to just consume. That's why I said earlier, part of me doing this online is because I want to show people I'm not just repeating shit I'm hearing. I'm looking this shit up, and I included sources in each and every one of my slides.
Mm.
There are sources that you can go to read scientific papers or articles on the points that I'm making. So yeah, it's just like NPC. You're just saying what you're programmed to say. Like what is Daddy MAGA saying? What is Elon Musk saying?
Right.
What is I don't think anybody really is asking this, but what is Alex Jones saying? Although, dude, that dude has
Fuck
been
Alex
right.
Jones.
That dude has been he's been right before though. I will say that.
Yeah.
Have you seen his comments on 9/11 before 9/11 happened? I'm sorry, his comments on essentially 9/11 before 9/11 happened. So before 9/11 happened, he basically called 9/11. He was like, "This is gonna happen." He basically calls 9/11 and
Play by play.
play by play, and the origin is what? The United States government funding, I think he said like Al Qaeda or something like that,
Okay.
and how it's an inside job. Like he's pushing that narrative. He's like, watch this happen. Watch when he's gonna be like, they're funding the Taliban. They're funding
Yeah.
Osama. Like all that shit. And there's side by sides that people do, like with articles after the fact, like with people pulling out stocks. Like I think he mentions like how those guys pulling out, like to be careful for something of that. I don't know. He's essentially like the Nosferatu for 2 minutes.
That's crazy.
As I read the comments, people are like, yeah, early Alex Jones was like pretty fucking spot on. Before he went insane, he was like, ironically looked at the government and was like, some shady shit is going on here.
And so what I was saying was that like the guy that who's responding to you, he would be classified more as like as an NPC.
Yeah, NPC.
I think there's a lot of like if we're looking at what's that circle graph, and then you have the
pie chart?
the ones that Venn diagram. I was going to say that. Okay, so you have the Venn diagram
Yeah.
of whatever a conformist is, defeatist. Where they intersect is like they're both like, they don't do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when it comes time to vote,
Yeah.
neither of them vote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
When it comes time to like engage, okay, maybe you don't want to vote, but you want to engage in some way, they don't engage in any way. They just go
Yeah.
about their lives
That's right.
because they're out of the loop. They're literally just uninformed.
Right.
So we separated defeatists from NPCs. There's a term I heard literally, I think this morning, called apocalyptic optimist. Have you heard of that?
Oh, I have heard of that before. Yes.
So they're talking about the fire, and I don't know what this lady does as a profession, but she was giving like I think a presentation somewhere. So she kind of explains the term as so whenever there's been like cataclysmic event like the fires in LA, shortly after that, that's when people like finally start mobilizing, unifying, because we live in polarizing times. They start to unify. So all the things that people have been trying to push for finally get pushed. So like we're hoping the LAFD finally gets a budget increase. We're hoping that people finally start voting and pay attention to who they're voting for.
Right.
And so do you think you engaging with people as this stuff is happening pushes that? Because fires happen all the time, right?
Yeah.
You argue with this guy a year ago when there's like no fires, right? Versus arguing with him now. Do you think you get a different result?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's what everybody's talking about right now.
Him getting his ass handed to him, do you think after this he goes and like reflects on what he talked
might
about with you?
He might not today,
Okay.
but it happened.
Yeah.
And inevitably, as he continues to have conversations, what I've said in the past, he has to confront that. So I, in a sense, think it's like, I hate to use this phrase, but like planting a seed.
How come you don't like it?
I think it's just like really cliche.
I say it all the time.
Plant a seed.
I say it all the time.
Plant a
We
seed.
talked about New Year's shit. And I
Did
said
we?
plant a seed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, plant a seed. Okay, but I like that example was better.
Yeah.
But anyways, again, I showed this dude the ability that like you don't have to name call somebody.
So you're trying to lead by example.
I hope. I mean, yeah, I would like to do that.
Because you didn't start out like again, like I would have called him an incel.
But I still crashed out. Look,
But you did a what? It wasn't passive. It was a you did stern, like a stern talking to, I guess.
let me listen here, son.
That's pretty much what it was.
I do. That is kind of one of the driving, like, motive. It's like one of the motives I have being online is that I want people to know that I'm not a perfect person, right? There again, that's another cliche.
Hoopa stank.
I'm not a perfect. I, um, no, like I mean, nobody's perfect, right? Like anybody's gonna be like, dude, I'm not perfect, blah blah. But one of the things I like about this account
Mm.
is that I've always just kind of like crashed out from the beginning
Mm.
because I'm like live posting everything I'm going through and how I'm processing emotion and how I'm processing parts of my life because things changed in my life at some point recently
Mm.
and my life became drastically different.
Yeah.
And I took it upon myself, whether I had no other choice, I still took it upon myself to keep my mind accountable to my, I don't know, spirit or heart or whatever you want to call it, soul. And that for me was going to therapy and learning about myself and how I think and what does it mean to be human? What is shame and what is joy and what, like, just rethinking those things all over again. I had already had a definition for all of those things, and many of those things are still the same. But a lot of what I was telling myself, I felt like was what I was wanting from myself without confronting myself.
Mm.
So through therapy, I was able to confront myself, my fears, anxieties, insecurities, all of which I still have to a much lesser degree.
Mm.
But by doing so, I felt like no longer shame. Kind of because, like, when you start from nothing, it's like, what do you have to be ashamed of? Like, nobody's watching me right now. So I go online and I become anonymous and I start making stuff.
Mm.
I just start being myself, talking about how hard life is or, like, how sad I am, right? Being emo.
Emo.
But I was doing all of that while, like, going to therapy. And so, like, I was being positive too, like, because I internally was becoming more positive.
Mm.
And when I have these conversations, jumping today, fast forward to today, when I have these conversations online, when I make posts online, when I feel passionately about something like what's going on right now in the Middle East and the California fires, or Luigi, when I feel passionate about those things, I see them so intertwined with mental health
Mm.
that if I ignore the one, I do it at the expense of the other. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, everything that has happened with the case that's going on right now with Luigi is consequential to human health. It's going to affect our minds.
Yeah.
Everything that's going on with how Trump rules in the next 4 years, it's going to affect our minds. And so, to me, mental health and politics are very, very, very closely intertwined. You can't separate the two
Yeah.
because one group of people is always gonna control who you are. Like what you are. So being online, I just post, like, honestly, like, I'm trying to be a good person. I'm trying to be somebody who is loving and kind and friendly. But I'm also super tired,
Mm.
also anxious, and I also get depressed, and I also am hella insecure, and I also am still working a lot of things about myself. But I can confidently say that I really do love life, despite all of the bullshit that's going on right now in the world. That's why I say defeatist a lot, because I come across them so often on my page. Like, a lot of people who follow me are just like, whenever I talk to a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people who just seem like they've given up, which is fine. Like, duh. I don't blame them. There's so much going on in the world that it does seem super easy to just give up. Just be like, all hope is lost.
Yeah. Because we all have our personal lives,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the state of affairs
Yeah.
in any given place.
Yeah.
And then an example now, like you have those two things, and if you're in LA, you have a fire that possibly removed your house. So in that moment, yeah, it'd be easy to be like, you know what, fuck this, I'm done.
Right. Because people feel helpless and they also don't know what to do. So I'm going to use my platform to, like, be real, to be me, to be like, hey, I'm super passionate about mental health advocacy and taking care of yourself and loving yourself, being happy with yourself. But I also live in the same fucking world you do.
Right.
But I'm not giving up.
So someone who sees your stuff can
I hope that
learn
they
to
can
better navigate their own experience.
experience, and I hope that they could just relate.
Yeah.
That they can be like, oh, I can be imperfectly passionate about something. I can be passionate about something and not know all about it, and that doesn't invalidate my resolve. It doesn't invalidate my intentions. I feel like a lot of people are like, why should I try to be good when everybody's just getting worse?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, that's like the defeatist attitude to me. And I want to combat that. I want to show people that, like, hey man, yeah, things suck, but like, why do they suck? You know what I mean? Let's talk about why they suck.
Yeah.
Let's actively combat those narratives. Let's see that you and me, we're not each other's enemies. Because you look different than me, because you talk different than me, because you think differently than me, you're not my enemy. When it comes down to is you're still human. And that means that I feel like we have a responsibility for each other. Like we owe it to each other to love each other, to look out for each other, to build a greater society.
Yeah.
Together for each other. So what is tearing us apart? What is making us dehumanize each other? What is making us look at each other and see fear or confusion or anger? I see one common thread. And I think it's that those who are in power, those who have it in power, and those who live in wealth are holding on to something that they think is so valuable that they've lost their own humanity. It's so much easier to step over people. I don't know. The divide just seems so apparent. I mean, I guess this is where you would insert like class, differences in class.
Yeah.
These arbitrary
Lines that get drawn
end up dehumanizing people.